2747G dated July 23rd, 2018, revised August 1st, 2019, and stamped and signed by PLS on August 2nd, 2019. Attachments: Form A, ZBA Decision 4767, and 2747G A&R Plan.
Those are just the attachments to the memo.
Yeah, one of the longest ones I've seen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second all around. Any other comments? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. There we go. Sign this and give it on to you. We do it now?
There's
or
the
do we
mile,
wait?
yeah, and then he can take it and go, and there's the pen right there.
Anybody else could just pass down 6 of the plans.
They will have you sign. Easy peasy.
Today is what, 21st?
21st. Yeah, you did the hard work by getting ZBA, and they were happy, so.
I had little to do with that.
Oh, well.
How's your plan?
I heard it getting bigger. I was coming down Route 6. I don't know what made me check my phone for directions, but I mean, get out of exit 11.
Oh, no.
Come on. I never looked at my phone.
Did they
But then
talk
all of a sudden I
about
saw nothing but
the
regular.
prior 87 was
Oh,
there?
it said, get off Westerville. Oh, it's trying to save you. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Many pages thing.
Okay. Village Center overlay.
But did they have different kinds of cluster housing?
Yeah, that's what he's here for. Yep.
Mr. Ojala.
Well, yeah, it is now.
Next up, we've got a site plan review for VCOD item that we handled, I believe, late last year. Coming back for a little bit of a Band-Aid and a checkup.
Well stated.
Sir.
My name is Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouthport, and here for an almost imperceptible change from the plan view. Stuart Bornstein had gone through all the different design review and site plan review, and this board taking advantage of your new bylaw, which allows the housing and special setbacks and so forth. He came to realize that the size of the units probably wouldn't meet the market requirement, so to save some cost and reduce the footage, he pulled the second level down to one level, and we worked with a design review to create a nice, attractive pitched roof and some special dormers, and adjusted the trim and so forth. But plan view is very, very similar, just adjusting the walkways a little bit to meet the exact entrance ways. So almost identical, same number of units, same number of bedrooms, just squished them down to one level to save on construction costs and to make them a little bit more affordable for folks. So we feel it'll be a good mix, and be glad to answer any questions if you do have them.
Mr. Roach.
Yes, good evening, Dan. There is one affordable unit.
There's a requirement for an affordable unit, and I think the decision allows us to either have that or to do
Fees
an
in
in
lieu
lieu.
of-
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
That's
that'll-
good.
however the language is that is allowed. Yeah.
Sure. That's all I have, Jim. Thank you.
Lee?
No comment.
Okay. Joe?
Just a couple questions again. Thanks for coming, Dan. The original plan we approved had, as I compared them, just one example, more trees on 28. And you don't show any trees on 28 now. So I'm just wondering, does the original plan we approved sit as a baseline, and then merely the adjustments to there are small building adjustments, I know, sidewalks, I could see that.
Yeah.
But I did notice that there are clusters of trees that are missing. The icon, the kind of the elm or not the elm,
Those
the
are
oak or the,
existing trees within the right-of-way don't appear to be shown, but the proposed trees on the property do appear to be shown in this.
Oh, I see.
proposed, yeah, the existing are the little X's, I figured that out. But the proposed you had on, when you saw us the last time, along that greenway strip along 28, you had approximately 8 of the eastern red cedars. And I don't see those on the new plan.
You got me on that one. I didn't instruct my guy to take any trees on or off. What may have happened in the existing conditions, like Kathy said, there's some street trees along there which we're not going to take down or anything, but might not be shown on this particular plot.
They were outside the sidewalk. The ones inside are there on your drawing now, but the ones on the, I have it here.
Oh, yeah.
This set here.
Yeah, so those are all existing, so.
These are?
Yes, yeah, there's a nice stand of trees along there that, it's obviously a layering, or not obvious to you, but to me, it's just a layering issue where existing trees of some sort got frozen, so I can thaw them again, but yeah, that's something that's out in the layout, and they're there, so those will remain. I'd be happy to replot it as a condition, just to put those back on, probably be appropriate. So that symbol should have been for an existing tree. It may be similar to a proposed tree, but, so right now we have a bunch of red oaks. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them proposed along the frontage of Route 28 on our property. And we'll absolutely put those in, and we'll retain those others that are, oh, I see, the little X's are there, 16-inch locust, 12-inch maple.
They're locusts and
Yep,
maples.
Yep.
So the idea is on that strip that's closest to 28, those trees that are existing would just remain.
Oh, yeah, yep. Very little change to the curb cut there. It's, yeah, so those will all stay out there. And
Aren't those trees?
there's a couple, go ahead.
Within the right-of-way?
Yeah, they're out in the state highway layout.
Those are, but there are some other existing trees that are in the buffer zone on the property that also aren't shown. So that's a good catch, Joanne, that I...
Yeah, there's like one at the entranceway to the commercial building. As an example, I think is new, or maybe it's an existing, I'm not I think it's an existing maple. But I guess I just wanted to understand that the landscape plan, the underlying landscape plan that we approved is the one that we'll be going forward with, and these other adjustments are merely to the building.
Yeah, so that symbol doesn't really show up in the planting schedule, but those were all existing trees. So I can put those back on, be happy to do that. Yeah, they show on, I don't know if did we issue the existing conditions plan as part of the set?
No.
Oh, okay. So that one would still remain on the record, and that's got them all on it. But you certainly don't want to take them off the proposed plan for no real reason, so I'll go ahead and plot those on there.
We can add a condition that just says resubmit layout landscape site plan showing all existing trees.
Or trees to remain in layout, would that be? It might get a little bit cluttered to show the ones in the
Existing
building
trees
and
to
so
remain.
forth. All the,
Landscaping plan, December 2018. We followed the landscaping plan of the last.
yeah, similar to, yeah.
However you guys want to do it. It gets confusing. I want a set that's all correct that I give to people,
Easy to keep track of.
Right, like Mark and everybody, they'll have the one set that has all the current plans on it. I like that, I mean, of showing all existing trees to remain.
Sure.
Joe, any other questions? Joanne, any other questions?
I'm sorry, no.
Mr. B?
Yeah, I noticed the activity at the commercial building has picked right up. They boxed in the drive-in portion to the, on the Wood Road side, and that's become very active as a site. Is that going to interfere with the parking for the units, for the condos?
No, he gets, I don't believe so. We had talked with him about the number that he gets in Phase 1. He gets a couple on our side, so he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 spaces. So he had felt that would be adequate. If he needs more than that, he'll have to negotiate that with these folks or come back for a minor modification or, you know.
All right, so the condos are going to be under a separate agreement, not involved with the commercial at all?
Correct. It's related somewhat, the Phase 1 and the Phase 2, and there's condominium documents which describe, you know, the common areas to drive up and down, but they will be like exclusive use of 13 spaces will go with his business, and then we'll have the exclusive use of these. I don't know that we'll number the spaces, but we may. You know, sometimes the units all like to have their designated space and a couple visitors and that sort of thing. But we do meet the code, and you know, work with him to make sure that he's satisfied with that, or you know, you'll have to do some ride share, or you know, work to get a couple more spaces.
My $64 question is, how long will it be before we actually see construction?
I'm not sure. Stuart is of one mind if he might sell it to another developer, or B, he might do it himself. And he hasn't given me a solid answer on it yet. I think he's going to see if he can pre-sell some units, and he might be able to move forward, or he would work with somebody else to do the work. But he has no firm timelines yet.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any comments?
I just think one of the things that we had discussed a little bit, Dan, was what were going to be the color of the shutters and the doors. I don't remember that being discussed previously at design review, and I know it wasn't discussed at this last design review. And I don't know whether the planning board wanted to put in some recommendations on that, or whether Stu had a recommendation he wanted and we could just put that in if it's acceptable to the board. I put some language in there in the planner comments of the color of shutters and doors to be muted American colonial or old village paint colors, so like a dark green or a dark blue or a dark cranberry or a black or something like that would all be appropriate. But I don't know if you had talked to Stu about a specific color that he wanted.
I didn't follow through, but that sounds like a fine condition, and then we'd just come back if it's anything except one of those, you know, colonial colors, black or a modest colonial color. That would be fine.
Typical Cape Cod.
Yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't want to have anything bright orange anyway, but we just want to
No,
make sure
no.
that that's not an option.
No hot pink doors, no.
Right, that was before my time, but I heard stories. And then another condition was related to the stone veneer that they had put. There's a certain, one of the units has the grade slope, so there was going to be some exposed concrete that wouldn't be overly attractive of the foundation, so they were just going to put some stone veneer on that. They didn't give a lot of details on there, so I just exposed foundation to be native field stone to give it an idea of what the coloring might be like. And then I just included all the other conditions from the previous decision. It should be noted that they did incorporate a lot of those comments in the plans that were revised from before, the original design review comments and original conditions from the planning board, as well as they, in my opinion, have adequately addressed all the comments from design review in the revised architectural plans that you see here today. These were not the exact plans that design review saw. They did work very nicely with design review to make some modifications to improve it.
Okay, so if we're going to make a motion, but if you're going to make a motion, we need to include the
Item 4 there, to resubmit layout and landscape site plans showing all existing trees to remain.
Do you want the dark blue, dark green, dark cranberry, dark gray in there as well, or just go with your shutters and doors to be muted American?
Whatever you guys want.
Okay. All right. Let's make sure we get in there that we're showing all existing trees to remain, of course. Call for motion.
I'll make a motion.
There's language if
Okay.
you're interested in the memo.
It's on page.
On the second page under planner comments.
Planner comments?
Yeah, I see it.
Motion to amend the
Right. A motion it's presented at the planning board meeting of August 21st, 2019, in accordance with the plans and materials submitted, is in compliance with VCOD design standards and is subject to the following conditions. 1, applicant shall adhere to all conditions from the Planning Board VCOD 2017-2, decision dated December 29th, 2017. Number 2, stone veneer to cover exposed foundation to be native fieldstone. Number 3, color of shutters and doors to be muted American Colonial or Old Village paint colors. And condition 4, existing landscape, what was the language you suggested?
Resubmit layout landscape site plan showing all existing trees to remain,
As she
that
said.
are to remain.
That are to remain.
Do we have a second?
Here, second.
Okay, second all over. Just making sure my notes are all set. Seeing no more, hearing no more comments, seeing no more comments, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstained? Good.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for approving. Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work. On to zoning. Do we have a date for the special town meeting yet?
We do.
Which is?
They went back to October 29th.
Okay. All right, just before Halloween, trick or treat, everybody. Do you want us to look at the comment sheet we received from the lawyer or the original?
Maybe we could go through the zoning map amendments quickly, because those are pretty straightforward. The ownership of the Great Island Plaza is finally getting settled. I think we all are very aware of that particular property. It's been dilapidated there at South Sea, Winslow Gray, and Route 28 for quite some time. And the owner is interested in redeveloping the site. Those lots, they own 3 lots in there. 590, 604 Route 28, which is the plaza and the post office, 12 Winslow Gray Road, which is that vacant fenced-in house, and then 18 Winslow Gray Road, which is vacant land, and it totals approximately like 2.5 acres. So it's a good chunk when you put it all together. All of those 3 parcels are within the VCOD VC1, but they have different underlying zoning districts. And you can see on the map what they were hoping to do is rezone all 3 of the parcels that they own to be B2 business, HMOD1, because HMOD1's always in the B2, and then remain the VCOD VC1. I think this will maximize the opportunities that they can to lay out the property now and try and make some improvements, but also might set them up better in the future for actually doing a VCOD project. If they're able to put all the parking in the rear and eliminate some of that parking in the front, that'll set them up for a VCOD project. So I think having the zoning change will allow for a better site layout design. And then the other change was, if we're going to make some map amendments for that, is there's just a really odd little square in Captain Parker's property that's R25, and it would make sense to just zone that the B2, VC1, and HMOD1.
Tom Rich, any comments?
Yeah, I've got a question, Kathy. Does these lots abut the lots that the contractor came before us a while back with a commercial building and 16 rentals?
Micah Coyne, yes, it does. That's where it says Twin Oaks Court.
Yes.
That's that parcel that he was doing that. There have been some discussions between the different owners.
Yep.
I don't know what the resolution, or whether they came to any conclusions. I think the current owner of the plaza wants to get started and wants to do something, maybe has grander plans in the future, but wants to get going with improving. Right now, it looks as though they're going to be trying to renovate and the existing building and bring it up to code and do some embellishments and get it back to being a vibrant commercial area.
And keep in mind what we discussed relative to straightening that area up.
I know.
And the,
2010.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, this would
with the
kind of...
state, that was one of our recommendations.
Right. This would kind of preclude, I think, really going forward with the realignment of Winslow Gray, because once they invest all that property, it would be very, very expensive in
I
order
would think,
to...
yeah, it wouldn't make
to
sense.
do it. But she's very interested. It's her, her property finally kind of came, there was 3 siblings that finally came into one sibling's hands as part of the estate, and she's interested in moving forward. They have also, we're going to be going before design review on September 3rd for reconstruction of the building that burned down and they demolished. They want to redo that. So that's going to be really nice. It's a sharp-looking building. It's a very small site on that particular property, but
Where is that one?
if you're looking at the plaza and looking at the post office, just to the right of the post office.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
She say what she had in mind in regards to construction?
For the plaza,
Yeah.
I think she wants basically renovate what's there now and fix it. I think the general shape of those buildings are kind of cute and quaint, and with different materials and different paint colors, you could really make that kind of interesting. I think she was going to like take off that weird band on the convenience store and stuff. I haven't seen any actual architectural plans, but the plans that they did next door were pretty nice.
Yeah.
I think they listened to what we were kind of saying with regard to what we're looking for. So.
Lee, you have any comments on this? No.
I had a question on the 3 parcels. I see the one that's in blue, the biggest one, and I see the one that's next to that. Then there's a small one.
That's
Yes.
part of the big one. The big blue,
Yeah.
and then it wraps around the house
Oh,
lot.
it
That's
wraps-
literally
oh,
the same,
okay.
yeah, that's the same lot, so that's
It's-
B1,
So there
B2.
isn't, that's it, part of the whole thing? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it is a little hard to see there, but yeah,
Okay.
And the site that burned is the one immediately to the east?
correct.
Okay, so that's also included.
That was already B2.
Okay.
My question I have is, we've got that one lot that looks like it's going to be boxed in all the way around it in blue. Obviously, that's legal because they have an existing R25 there, and the B2s,
We want to make all of it B2,
all 3 of them?
all of that, all of those lots, yep.
Okay.
That's what's being proposed anyway, that's what the owner was asking.
Okay. I was just looking at the same, didn't see the lot number, just looking at the arrows.
Yeah, it would really make
Let's
sense.
hope. Let's hope, let's hope, let's hope. Okay, turning our
And
eyes.
so it would be, just going back to the grand vision of making that a single intersection with one light instead of, probably not likely with this kind of,
The problem with that project all along is that the traffic improvements that would have been received based on the analysis that was done by the Cape Cod Commission didn't show a significant improvement in that aligning that intersection compared to the option 1, which had been to upgrade both of those lights. Those are very old lights. They don't talk to each other as well.
Yeah.
I don't think there's as much triggering on the side. They don't have the cameras, which we all see in a modern intersection. So they basically said, we're not going to pay for taking any of that land. So the town would have to buy all of that and come up with, probably more than $1 million in order to help move that project forward. And that's kind of what was the tripping point on that project.
I do see, and I'm sure others have observed, that also is a cut-through. When people want to avoid that light, the South Sea Street light, they will jump into the parking lot by the West Yarmouth Post Office and then cut over to Winslow Gray. And I would, depending on how she develops it, or they develop it, that kind of cut-through would still, in traffic, might still be an issue. But it's really not a zoning issue, is it?
Well, we can always, when Christie was redoing his site down there, his gas station down near the Bassiford Bridge, he was willing to give up, a curb cut. There used to be extra curb cuts there, and we cleaned them all up, and so I'm sure the magic lady sitting here at the end of the table can wield her magic wand, and we can have a curb cut disappear and maybe come out somewhere else. I'm sure it'll work well.
Part of the discussions when the rezoning was trying to eliminate that curb cut that's right there close to the intersection, because that's just a safety issue. So part of the discussions with them was, well, then if they have this all the same, they might be able to put all the parking in the back and they won't need that curb cut, so we could close that. And we might not also need all that parking in the front, so they can have more green space, all the good stuff that we love to see.
Yeah, oh, good.
We'll see if we get it, but those are all the good stuff we want to see. So go ahead.
I just had one question. The 2 lots to the right, going towards College Street, are those owned by the same people?
The 2 lots to the right, the first one that's just to the right of the post office is owned by the same person who owns the plaza. The next one over is part of the Mike Acoyne development, which includes the big R25 parcel that's shown in the back, but that's all being developed under the VC1. So that's a separate owner.
Okay. And do we have a policy of when you have additional commercial establishments to eliminate curb cuts, to somehow encourage developers to tie them together in such a way that traffic can move?
The rear access between lots, is that what you're kind of talking about?
Well, I just
Yep.
was wondering if we had a policy where we have a lot of commercial developments adjacent to each other, and when a new one comes in and wants to redevelop, do we try to encourage reducing the number of curb cuts and allowing traffic to flow
Yep. Internally.
internally?
I always advocate for that. I find that lots of times there's a lot of resistance to that. Even like Silver Cloud, when they did it's basically a truck storage building, but they did a lovely job on that, but they did not want to give up that curb cut on Route 28 for future whatever. They ended up blocking it off and greening up the space, but they still kind of have the curb cut there. One of the things in the VCOD is that we certainly encourage use of shared driveways, and also the interconnection behind, so that if someone wants to go from one commercial area to another, they can do it behind without having to come out onto Route 28. The 612 property actually shows the area on the plan where you would be connecting to the plaza, potentially connecting to the plaza. So that'll be certainly something that we'll talk about with that developer, and how we might be able to make that connection between those two developments. But yeah, if we can avoid people coming out onto Route 28 or reduce the number of curb cuts, it's always something I'm advocating for.
Lee, that's generally part of site plan review.
Okay.
Okay. Move on to the attorney's comments.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, I know you want to go very quickly. Just very briefly, one of the things that came up recently with the Country Fest, where it's a for-profit venture, but at a town-owned piece of property, they didn't have the ability to put a sign up at the site advertising it, other than a tiny little temporary 18-square-foot commercial sign. So what they wanted to do was be a community event. Like over at the Seaside Festival, they could go through the community event sign policy and have a 32-square-foot, usually they're banners that just get put on the fence and that type of thing. So the idea here was saying, well, if we're doing something similar to what we did many years ago, where we had temporary outdoor recreation, where we said, yeah, that's allowed by the zoning bylaw. You don't need a special permit as long as it's on town-owned property and you've gone through that use of town-owned land process with the Board of Selectmen. So we're not double dipping and making people go to multiple places. The idea here is adding that for-profit option on town-owned land. So people would still have to go through that town-owned land, but they could say at that time, oh yeah, by the way, I want to use my 32-square-foot sign on the property and be part of that process. Right now, there's two ways of kind of dealing with community event signs. Part of it's in the bylaw, and the other part's in the Board of Selectmen sign policy, which would also need to be amended.
Agreed, I was going to tackle this. Isn't this part of her comments?
That is, yep.
Okay.
I just wanted to quickly give the overview of why we're here, even talking about it.
I've got one comment on the banners, but let's stay with the proposed. This came about for the Country Fest we had. You'll notice for a while the property which abuts the old drive-in site, which abuts Lobster Boat, et cetera, for a while had a truck out there with a sign on the side of it, and it led to sparks of saying, how are you doing this? And various letters were written from various enforcement boards, and so we're trying to make a win-win situation here. Has this gone through Mark's office? Has he liked the wording on this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Does anybody have any issues with this? Okay. It's one of those little extras that I agree should be allowed, since someone's paying the town to use a property, and they want to make money, and obviously we want to make money off of them. All's
We
fair.
want to see them make money.
The only comment I had on the community signs, the banners, flags, or however you want to call them.
What do we?
Let's see here. Single standalone fundraising or special event signs on premises. Page,
This is under the community event sign policy
Yes.
from the Board of Selectmen?
yeah,
Okay.
I think my eyes are going. Standalone, A, single standalone fundraising or special event signs on premises. Line A, 4.5. Content of signs must be non-political and must be for nonprofit organization. Do we have that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The only reason I'm bringing that up is the Melody Tent last year made $3.2 million, but is a nonprofit. So if they come to the town and say, here's our 501c3 status, I want to put up a sign for, I don't know, Chris Body and the Four Tops, under this bylaw, it has to be allowed. So is that allowable, or?
Are they formally a nonprofit?
Yes, they're a 501c3.
Then
So
they
is
can
it-
do it today.
Okay, so the hospital could do the same thing as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sometimes there should be something like a good faith in lieu of payment, but I don't know. All right.
But I think your point's well taken as far as Kate Federoff, the town council, has reviewed it, and that's the red line version, or the handwritten comment version that I handed out. She didn't know why we were talking about content at all. And that language was in the original sign policy with the Board of Selectmen.
We're going through this at our church as well with our new space that we just built, and they're all up in arms about 501c3s. I said, so some 501c3s, make good money, and we should ask for some kind of, good faith, that kind of payment. But if you guys want to comment or,
So is Kate saying to take the content out or just leave that in?
The impression, and unfortunately, I was not able to talk to her. She had sent this later in the day. But her comment was, why are we getting into content kind of like at all? And this kind of went back to all the other previous sign bylaw amendments we've having. It's like
Because of what continuously comes up.
Right, content is probably something you might want to stay away from. I can get more information from her, but maybe that is something we want to strike altogether and not talk about content.
okay. Any other comments? Signage.
A quick comment on this is the policy, Selectmen's policy thing, and I know someone else will be in charge of, I guess, proposing this to the board. We don't.
Probably us,
We will. Oh, okay.
or at least me.
Yeah, okay, number 5.
Number 5.
It didn't read, content of signs must be non-political and must be for a nonprofit organization, or special event signs for temporary outdoor. It's a repeat of,
Right. It could,
it's exactly the same as 5 on the single standalones.
right, but it's either take them out of both. This was a very confusing policy, and so the single standalone fundraising was all, signs was all it said. So trying to work with Mark is, how have you been interpreting? What does this mean? He goes, those are the ones that you put on your property to advertise. Like St. Pius might have one of those big thermometers because they're fundraising or something along those lines. But if you're having an event, you might also want to have some of these directional or information signs off premises somewhere around town, kind of directing you. We're having this big bake sale, or we're having something like that to fundraise and let people be able to do that off premise with the permission of that particular property owner. So that's kind of why it's been changed to on premises and off premises, to understand where these signs are going and the different sizes that are allowed.
Yeah, Joan, it is redundant, but it's distinguished between on-premise or off-premise.
Yeah.
So but that redundancy is there for that reason.
But I guess my question to you guys is that something that we want to take out altogether? Because when we're talking about not nonprofit or for-profit, I think we kind of already have addressed that in the zoning bylaw already, because we both say for religious, civic, and nonprofit organizations, you can have those signs as defined in the sign policy by the Board of Selectmen. And then we also go in and say special event signs for temporary outdoor recreation, blah, 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 refer to the sign policy. So maybe it's not needed.
Yeah, I think I agree with the town council, maybe we don't need number 5 at all, because there'll be, well, what's non-political?
Right.
And I guess my question about that phrase was, the signs must be non-political, must be for a nonprofit, or the signs must be for a special event, temporary. It just didn't, it didn't make sense to me, is what the bottom line is. So I think just being silent on the content of the signs is probably not a bad idea.
That makes sense to me, if you guys.
Agree.
Even fundraising, that's content. Why do we care if they're raising funds or they're not?
I think
I know that the existing policy reads fundraising, right?
Right.
That's the existing
Yeah,
one. So I
right.
don't want to tamper with the existing one if the board has already, approved, Board of Selectmen's already approved that, but
I get your
one could also question what's fundraising, what the definition of that might be.
Well, that's interesting, because I added the fundraising into the zoning bylaw because they had it in the community event sign, but maybe you don't need to say it, just to advertise special events. If
Yeah.
you're a religious, civic, or nonprofit, or whatever your event is, whether it's
Because we're kind of saying
fundraising.
fundraising is okay, but
Other
maybe
stuff's okay,
fundraising
too.
for political reasons is okay.
What's a special event as
Yeah.
opposed to an event? You know?
There you go.
It's like,
Now you're digging the hole deeper.
Yeah, we're going in a circle here.
You might want to talk to Mark about
Sorry I
that.
brought it up.
I think your point's well taken. Maybe we do take out just standalone special event signs and multiple directional or informational signs off premises. So I don't have a problem with that.
I think the biggest part is just having a time limit. That's the biggest thing.
12, I was surprised to see the 12 months,
I
actually.
was shocked to see the
I was
12
like,
months.
12
too.
months, really?
I even went back to the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes to see if I could get something, like,
That's a long
how did this
time.
come about? I think that's a long time, and if you guys have some suggestions, I don't think the Board of Selectmen would be, adverse to hearing them.
I was thinking the shorter the time, the better, but
It just seemed like and the only reason I could think of is, if you are having a large fundraiser, like I said, you see those thermometers all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are going to
It's
be
a
for more,
progress.
that's not an event, that's a fundraising, so maybe we do want to keep
Yeah.
fundraising. They do distinguish, it's very different between fundraising sign and special event sign.
Special event signs.
Right. 12 months seemed very long for me as well.
It does.
But I hate to go back to my church
No, it
again. I
helps.
apologize, but we've been pulling hair out on this one. No church, I believe, in its good standing, is going to ever discriminate on the race of color, creed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Especially the church, the Episcopal Church, who has a colored rainbow flag out front. And yet we have people who come to our church who want to rent it for the Girl Scouts and the Daughters of the American Revolution. And I can keep going on gender-based groups. And we're breaking our own rules. And I finally said, why don't we just strike that whole line right out? I don't think future rectors and wardens are going to be having this issue. Do we really need to have something in there where, making this up against St. Pius, it has a thermometer on their lawn for a year? Is anybody can complain and have Mark write a letter to have it down?
I would not be shocked. I'm sorry.
Really?
I would not be shocked if somebody were to say that they found it unattractive and they drove by it every single day and it's been there and it hasn't been changed and it's just been there and there and there. Yeah, I'm afraid so.
How about if they park a boat in front of it? Oh, I'm sorry, can't do that.
He gets
Sorry, wrong.
those complaints as well and has a list that he's running.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then-
But for fundraising, in general, would you need a sign for a fundraiser for 12 months? That
No,
seems
I mean,
long.
I just asked
loses
that
its,
question. You said no.
its urgency. I would think you'd want it up for some period of time before and then It comes down when you're done.
Perhaps 6 months and then renew it if you need.
Yeah, 6
need
months
to.
is a lot
I'm
more.
sorry, I may have misunderstood your.
No, I've seen capital campaigns run longer than a year, but I like the idea that Mr. Roach just threw out. I think it's a good idea. Just have a renewal, just come and
Yep.
state your case.
If they need it, exactly.
It allows for renewal anyway after 12 months, so we'll just change that to 6 months.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Are we leaving the fundraising language in there? Because we have a separate time frame for fundraising. It seems like we need to keep the,
Again, I would ask Mark, he gets so much flack on this stuff,
yeah.
really.
Well, we worked on this all together. We sat down and banged it all through, and he reviewed it and everything. But we always want to know what you guys are thinking, and then I'll circle back with him.
Would you ask him if he has a problem taking the word out of fundraising? I think Joe makes a good idea, again,
Well,
as
then-
does Lee.
Then what do we do for the length of time? Do we just not, single standalone signs? I mean,
Well, it could be
what's the title? I agreed, and then the conversation's good, because I keep going, I keep
Yeah.
changing my mind as we talk more. Because we do have a special fundraising signs. So what would you call the title there, Brad?
If somebody's coming before the town to get a permit, it doesn't have to be of some adequate use. I'm just trying to think of something, we're not pigeonholing somebody. It has to be fundraising, or it has to be a concert sign of a 3-month concert series brought to you by the Cultural Center. Doesn't it have to be something something in good standing, and I don't know, or does it have to be pigeonholed?
Well, I included in the front here the definition that's included in the bylaw now for special event sign, which just is very generic, I think, and maybe that's all you kind of need, is a temporary sign advertising or pertaining to a civic, patriotic, nonprofit, educational, or other event taking place in the town. What's not covered by that?
Yeah.
So maybe we just say special event in standalone special event signs.
Define it to special event, and then you can interpret from there.
I think
Who's the licensing authority that signs off on this? Is it Mark?
it's Mark.
That's good, okay.
The reason I put in larger signs that we put in the 30, may be allowed by the Board of Selectmen on a case-by-case basis is I believe they allowed a larger sign for the Seaside Festival than 32 square feet. So I wanted to give them some flexibility to be able to do that. 21 days, sounds good? We banged around a couple, 21, 30, sound good? I
Sounds
think
reasonable.
Kate was talking about, do we want to mention 14 days for commercial, meaning the commercial endeavors would have 14 and then the nonprofits. I'm comfortable with 21
Keep
for
it
everybody.
21.
Keep it a single one.
Perfect, okay. So, I will go ahead and turn this into an article and edit it for the next meeting, this and the map.
Would you ask Mark for just a paragraph of why he makes changes he did?
On what do we
On
need?
just a separate sheet, like Brad, we'd like to put fundraising back in there, and Lee, we liked your idea about this, and Joanne liked your idea about this, but this is why we're doing it. I'm just saying, if he wants to keep the word fundraising in there, let us know why. That's all.
I'll go through the edits with him, and if he objects to any, then I'll have the conversation with him about why, and then I'll get that information to you guys. Does
Thank
that
you.
sound, yeah.
That's good.
The last time we talked about signs, a couple of years ago, I think it was, the issue of special events came up, and we just never followed it, pursued
We
it.
did. We had the Rogers Ski and Sports Amendment for, what, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago? Remember it came down to...
That's right, that would be covered in that, yeah.
Yeah, it was just, that was a little bit of an issue, and got through that one.
Can we just talk very briefly about the timeline for town meeting, because it's extremely tight? It is October 29th. I'm going to take your edit. I have not heard yet. I will probably assume 6 p.m. or when does it normally start at 6 p.m.? Yeah, I forget. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we had evening ones. I'm going to take all of this and turn it into articles, and we'll discuss it again at our September 4th meeting. But we're going to have to make some really quick decisions as to whether we want to move forward with that, because we need to talk to the Board of Selectmen at their agenda on the 10th. So I'd need to literally, the next day I'd have to send the information to the Board of Selectmen. because it's really, if they're not interested in making any changes to their event policy, we're not making any changes to the zoning bylaw either. So it's really kind of, they have to go hand in hand. We'll also have to have a public hearing on these changes. Unfortunately, the warrant is going to be printed or approved, I believe, right now before the Board of Selectmen at a meeting that they're going to have on September 17th. So we will be having our public hearing after that, sometime in early October, either the 9th or maybe on the 16th at our regular meeting there. Any changes that come out of that would have to be made on town meeting floor. That's just unfortunately the way it is. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick rundown of the time frame going forward with special town meeting.
Busy.
Just for clarification, this will be our last planning town meeting until next October.
I still have not officially gotten any word. No one said to me, Kathy Williams, town planner, who staffs the planning board, that you're now going to the special fall town.
Okay.
We have a fall town meeting. Anytime we have a fall town meeting and you want to throw something on there for zoning, sure. But the fact that we're not going to be able to do any of that in the springtime, I haven't heard that.
How many
I-
articles do we have?
That's a good question. I think Lee might have a better understanding of that, because there'll be something for the DPW, and then there'll be probably multiple ones for wastewater, and then we'll have 2 here for our zoning. And I think that's basically it.
All right.
The school.
Wastewater.
Isn't the school on there?
Oh, yes, the DY agreement, you're right. Wastewater.
Do you want to do the letter, or do you want to do the memorandum?
What was that
We
memorandum?
have the water resources memorandum, and we have the,
Oh, no, yeah, that's fine.
Jeff Colby,
Jeff Colby?
Water Resources Advisory
Yep,
Committee?
yep, sorry. I didn't have it in the right order. We had talked about this at the last meeting, the build-out analysis that was done and updated, and basically was asking for an additional 86,000 gallons per day in order to take into consideration the VCOD, allowing for some additional bedrooms in existing residential properties, and then just basically the wastewater infrastructure economic development study that was done that really did show a lot of pent-up demand. So CDM took that information and they cranked it through their cost-sharing program, and basically came up that the increase of those additional gallons for build-out would be at approximately $7 million to the overall project. CDM has also added inflation into the project. So between inflation and this, it's going from $112 to $126.3 million for phase 1.
That's for the 300,000 gallons?
The $7 million.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you're adding, they had to do some larger size for the collection system, I think, in some areas. And then we had an increased share at the wastewater treatment facility and an increased share at the effluent discharge site.
And there's been some talk about the double pipe, running 2 pipes?
I hadn't heard that. What's
Yeah.
that?
Lee's shaking his head no. Lee, do you want to jump in here for a few seconds?
Excuse my voice. I don't think there's anything with double pipes. The only area that we were talking about double pipes was in Barnstable, and
Yeah, if we made that deal with Barnstable.
we're not going to go that route. I don't believe. And one other question I had, Kathy, that additional amount of money, which is now going to be 126, is that the conservative option of going with the treatment alone, or is that going with the DHY?
That's DHY. I believe to go it alone is not significantly higher with regard to construction costs, but as you know, our savings for the town of Yarmouth is very heavily in the operation maintenance.
Right. Okay.
But that number, the 126.3 is for the combined, the DH.
I thought the difference between going alone and going with DHY on capital was over $1 million difference.
Now it's like 600,000 is my understanding.
Okay.
Maybe in the back previously it was estimated at about $1 million for phase one. Inflation is obviously a big issue, as well as inflation has been extremely high on construction projects lately due to a lot of uncertainty, which is going to impact us.
There was an article in the paper today about that three-town consortium was approved.
Right.
See that?
Yeah, it went through the House, which was excellent news, because when we had met on Monday for a department division head meeting, we weren't sure what was going to happen, so it worked out good. Now it's in the Senate.
Yeah.
It still has to get passed by the Senate, and then in sufficient time for us to vote on it at special town meeting, as well as Harwich and Dennis.
Crunch.
So I just wanted to give you that information, and then based on the last meeting, there was some discussion of having the planning board submit a support letter to the Board of Selectmen for the wastewater program. I'd worked up a draft that's been very nicely edited by Brad to,
One typo, though.
yeah.
So, sorry.
Yep, no worries. That I submitted to and gave to everybody, if you want to take a minute and take a read through that.
Kathy, I was looking at that letter, and I don't think the planning board should get heavily into the housing issue and adding additional units or bedrooms and this and that and the other thing.
I said the same thing a while back, too, because we may want to have preference in regards to that 300,000 gallons. We talked about this before.
Okay. I just thought that it might be something that people who are kind of like, well, what am I getting out of this? You know, well, you might be able to get an additional bedroom or a family accessory unit or something like that that you couldn't have now.
But my concern is, we already proposed something at the last town meeting, right? And it got shot down.
Last town meeting?
Yep.
In
For
2011.
For the accessory dwelling.
Accessory units, extra bedrooms.
Yeah, right, but I mean, people can still do family-related or an affordable. What we were trying to do is ease the regulations. It's not that we were.
But I think there's an element out there that is concerned about changing the character of the community, and I don't know what the perception is with the planning commission about how loose or how tight you want to restrict development. But I think that for us to give an impression that we're in favor of the wastewater system because it's going to allow some big expansion in
Residential expansion.
residential, that's probably the wrong thing. I like the idea of putting the words smart growth in, because what we're really talking about here is once we put the sewer system in, we're really interested in the commercial development, but it's going to be more smart growth. It's not going to be an expansion necessarily of commercial territory.
Right, right. Yeah.
So I don't want people to get the impression that, you know, wastewater is going to change the character of the community.
Well, we already have in place our mixed-use zoning initiatives for the VCOD and even the HMOD1. So we might be able to add something along there when we're talking about the different zoning initiatives and opportunities to developers to improve and modernize their properties. Maybe we can say something about following the smart growth initiatives from the Village Center Overlay District that's concentrating the development along Route 28 or something
Well,
like
who's asking for a letter? We don't really have to write one, do we?
that. Lee's asking for
You
one.
really want a letter from the planning board?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to keep it short and simple, I have no problem. Planning board is,
keep in mind,
in favor of,
we haven't put together a financial plan yet for how we're going to pay for it.
Right, but,
And that's going to be coming up before too long.
yeah,
well,
right.
then that gets back to what Kathy said. You've got to, she's trying to placate the homeowners here a little bit, saying, all right, I'm going to lose my septic system, I'm going to lose this and this, what do I get out of it? You know, so, but it's, I too am under the feeling, heart of hearts, that I think this is supposed to mostly help our commercial developers and not have Captain's Village expand to double-decker, triple-sized, so.
Yeah, the build-out analysis, included like 1,000 to 1,400 new bedrooms throughout the entire Seward area. It wasn't like no one can double.
No, we want to be looking at branded hotels and perhaps a national change that come in, somebody that would really help us upgrade 28 and give us some of the tax money
Yeah,
back.
that's like 110,000 gallons of the
If
8
the-
or 900,000 gallon
Lee,
building.
I'm going to put a charge on, just again, I've tried to move this along because I have to get up at 3:45 this morning and go to P-Town. Could you email Lee the document?
Yep.
There's probably a couple lines here you probably want to strike out. Do you want to take a crack at it and have some back Kathy alone, and then Kathy can send it back out to us alone?
Yeah.
So we're not doing an illegal meeting?
Okay,
And then you could say, I really think these words should come out. And then she could send it back to us saying, under the advice of Lee, he thinks this would be a better way to go. What do you think, board? And then we can all respond back to Kathy individually. Would that be okay?
that's good.
Well, we should
the
discuss it at
concept-
the September 4th meeting.
Agreed.
I mean, yeah.
I don't want everybody having an illegal meeting here and having it
A
apply.
total-
That's all.
Yeah.
The concept of using the build-out is necessary for considering what that extra gallonage is, how it is derived. The build-out is important, that we don't cut off our nose to spite our face down the road. You have to have that contingency in there. And if that implies more housing development, it's just the nature of what may happen or may not happen. Some of that is still controlled by the existing zoning and the existing bylaws that we already have. So,
Supply of water?
yeah, exactly.
So you'll send that to Lee?
I will send that to Lee.
We'll have a Lee in it, okay. I didn't see any, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Conservation plan,
The CPC?
yes.
Yeah,
CPC.
they sent that out to ask whether the planning board wanted to comment on it at all. I didn't have any particular comments, I just wanted to put it on the agenda if you guys were interested in doing anything. If not, that's fine as well.
Well, they put out all the issues that come forward with CPA. I serve as vice chairman on that committee as well. Been on there for about 10, 11 years and doing a great job. Obviously, you can see by some of the town programs, recreation, what they've done for the library and so forth, and then some of these other historic buildings. And from my own perspective, we're getting to the point now where it seems like it's the same ones coming back. And the applications, when I got on, were between 24, 25, 26. And now we're down to maybe 6 or 8. And last year, I think we approved 7. So it's been in service to the town and to the community relative to historic and certainly affordable housing. That's where we got the $2.2 million for Dakota Partners. And then we have invested $800 million for the Volpe family for
800 million, 800,000.
800,000.
Just in case anybody's at home.
I'm trying to talk fast because this guy's got to go. But anyway,
Right.
so there's going to be some discussion in regards to what the selectmen came up with a couple of years ago along with town staff, splitting the 3% to 1.5% for wastewater and 1.5% for CPA. So I'm not sure how that's going to be accepted. I have a feeling, but that they're going to be moving forward.
There's a lot of other potential there's a lot of other potential sources for funding of the wastewater. I mean, he hadn't taken any, in the presentation that Rich did, he didn't take into consideration, any of the new growth, revenue that we're going to get from some of this development.
But he
So-
needs the startup money.
Right, so I'm just saying that there's probably, these are the ones he's identified, but there's probably like another 6 that are in his back pocket of potential ways of continuing to pay for it.
Just as a report of a committee, the kind of their annual report, I mean, I thought it captured what its intent was. It said that, it wanted to kind of lay out how the committee works, what the law is and the like. But I think it gave I think you, as part of the committee, you didn't give yourself enough credit. I would have paid more attention. I would have had like the application guidelines and all that stuff as an appendix in the back. That shouldn't be front and center. And then all of the stuff that is important, that the active, ongoing, that's in the ground now in each of the 4 areas. I'm not sure why recreation was lumped in to be part of, to make it 3, but I would say, and kind of build that up as to the stuff that, not necessarily historical, but the work over the last couple of years, because it takes time to even get something shovel in the ground on some
Sure.
of these things.
Yep.
And then I did think that the caring comments, I'm not sure, that could have been like an appendix as well, since they're kind of parenthetical bullets. So those could be kind of, a couple of appendices, just in terms of structure. But the key thing is what you just mentioned, Tom, is the future of what the CPC is going to be looking at.
Keep in
and
mind,
the
that's coming up
direction.
for a vote next year.
Yeah, and
Whether we
I
stay-
think it would be good to lay the groundwork that, hey, the committee is working with the Board of Selectmen on perhaps refocusing our attention on a couple of different areas, and that it's not going to be kind of the cookie cutter, these are the 4 things, and this is what we've got going.
Well, we're mandated by the state to do
Right
those
now,
4 entities. Yeah.
right, for a certain period of time, right? Is there a clock on that?
2020.
2020. So for next year, I think we're having some discussion about what 2020 is going to bring and what the considerations might be.
Some towns,
Would be helpful.
some towns have taken the 3% and given it to wastewater. Some towns
The
have
entire
done.
amount.
Yeah. Some towns have split it 1.5%, and then Sandwich,
Increased.
it was example given that Sandwich focused on adding a percent
2.
and put that on the tax rate, property tax rate, and have 2 and 2. But for Yarmouth, we can't compete with Sandwich. I mean, their per capita income is 22% higher than Yarmouth. So those are some of the issues that we're going to be facing at either the special town meeting or next year's regular town meeting. So it's $112 million we have to raise, and the debt service per year is 3.7. So
126.
I think it's higher, yeah.
No,
We just got
120.
126 million. We just got an extra 300,000 gallons on the table.
that's but that's 7 million?
Well, then there's inflation, so that brings it up to 126.
This is 40 years. Consider the inflation in 40
Oh, yeah,
years.
true.
Wait, we-
Joanne, you had some really good comments. Could I ask you to maybe send an email to Mike Berry?
Absolutely.
Great.
I'd be more than glad to do that. I was going to ask you how I might throw these together, and so, Mike, I'll send them along to Mike.
Yeah, and if you don't, you have his?
And I'll copy you guys.
Perfect.
Those sound reasonable, Tom, from your perspective, my comments? They're
Oh,
okay?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep,
The
absolutely.
CPC meeting is next Monday. I think 6 o'clock.
Okay. You're on CPC, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't see any minutes.
I finished him, but I figured it wouldn't be fair to give him to you this late. And we had a lot on our agenda, so we'll have them for next week.
Okay.
They're
I
all
kept
done.
flipping through. Beth said, what are you looking for? I said, well, I know my eyes are going, but I don't see minutes. Let me see that. Thank you, honey. Board of Appeals, we received committee updates. I'm going to table that. I'm sorry, unless somebody has something really amazing. Board member items, I would like to know, because we're so low on agenda, so low here on attendance in terms of actual bodies who are going to be here, where do we stand the next month coming up of people making a Wednesday meeting? Are we okay? Because you're all very, very valuable.
But I have a CPC meeting on the 4th, but that's 3 o'clock, so,
Okay, you're
Is
here?
it the 8th?
yeah,
If you're
upstairs.
here.
When's your public hearing, Tom?
Oh, that's the 18th,
Yeah.
at the new church,
Right, at 4.
yeah.
18th,
Is that-
that's a Wednesday.
Is that us? That's our, I thought it was a conflict with us. Because I
I don't
told
know.
Mike I could only go to 5.
Are we planning on meeting the 18th?
Yeah, we usually meet the 4th and
Sep-
The 1st and 3rd.
So yeah, it'd be the 18th.
Yeah, there would be a conflict.
All right, no supermajorities. We can handle a meeting of 4, which is fine, so long as we don't have any need for a supermajority or anything.
Yeah.
Have we had anybody apply to be on the planning board?
I talked to Mark Forrest, and he had some ideas he's going to be checking into.
Okay, let me email Mark.
He knows about,
Okay. I
yeah,
just-
he does.
a couple
Yeah, we
ideas.
talked about that.
Okay. Correspondence, anybody want to yell at the planning board or anything?
Not to my knowledge.
On the board member item, I'd like to sort of, this is a personal item, and I certainly couldn't be part of any decision, but we were talking earlier about zoning changes, and the I live on, there's 14 lots that are zoned B1, and there are no commercial uses of any of those. The house I have, the property that I have, originally was an electrician who specialized in architectural type lighting, and that was the only business on the street, and it probably prompted the original designation of the B1 for that area. But I was just wondering about the concept of whether or not that strictly residential area could be put back to a residential.
Well, just speaking on history, the only time the planning board has waded into that field of taking away someone's zoning rights, we did the foolish thing of going after windmills and decided Mr. Sears would be a great gentleman to take on.
Oh, Jesus.
Not a good move.
When was this?
1994 or 5, Dr. Marasco, 96, somewhere in there. Mr. Sears on Old Main has a parcel that I think is B1. I do believe it's B1. And we thought it'd be good for the town to make it residential or something because we didn't want a CVS being built there. And we didn't think that was a good move after he talked to us and other people talked to us. So we've made it an informal policy that if the street wants to come before the planning board and have it remove their rights of being B1, we'd be happy to consider it. But we usually don't leap into a void and say, we're making you B or R or this without some feedback.
All right, is it something that can be what's the word? Solicited as a vote from the owners of that street, of those properties?
I guess we could look, I don't want to make more work for Kathy, I'm just speaking in a perfect world. If we
You could
look
do it
on a map and
informally.
we see
You
the
could
color is different, the color is a light blue instead of a dark blue, isn't it?
I know exactly what you're talking about. It does, and it goes up for quite a ways. But typically, the ones that I'm proposing for this special town meeting, those are, one of them is the actual property owner asked for it, and the other one is just correcting something that I'm sure Jerry doesn't even know is a problem on his property, but I'll let him know we're doing it. But if we're doing something that we would want to notify all of those abutters and get their input. So that's a little bit more involved process, but I think if you could do some neighborhood canvassing and to see, are people in your neighborhood interested? And if they are, then kind of letting us know.
Okay.
They might not even know
I was
that.
about to say, it could be a sleeping dog.
Do they even know that it's a
Yeah,
bee?
some of them do.
Some of them do,
Some
yeah.
of them do. And As I said, it's not something that I could participate in any decision on because of
If they want to
conflict.
build a CVS or a bank, I think they'd have the legal right to do it.
Yeah, but none of these parcels are big enough, really.
All lumped together. There we go.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to mention the hospital is going forward with a $180 million tower, 6 floors. And we talked about years back a medical district. Remember, Brad? I think we're getting closer to it between the wastewater and what the hospital is doing, so.
We do have some type of medical, we have an automatic
Mod.
bylaw,
We have a mod that has very little information in it.
We do have a medical overlay district, but it's like yay tall. It was
Yeah.
Pat Butler came before us, he wanted to make it easier. to
Yes,
go
I
between
remember him.
towns.
Yep.
Yeah, and now I think Eliza Cox is
just-
the only one left with a copy of
Just
that.
think of what that will
She's working with the
to
hospital.
bring in as far as medical services.
Good idea. Staff updates?
The Parkers River Bridge has been awarded,
Hey!
and we're working to execute the actual contract with the contractor. We're having pre-construction meetings with Mass DOT and the contractor next week. And we were also able to hopefully obtain additional supplemental funding from the Natural Resources Conservation Service that would help to provide more of a contingency buffer for the project. So lots of good stuff have happened to Parkers River in this last few months, and hopefully the highway access permit will also be issued for the meeting, before the pre-construction meeting, which is on Monday. And starting, when we say start construction after Labor Day, I don't know how much you'll physically see right after Labor Day, but hopefully the contractor will start with shop drawings and that type of thing, getting a construction trailer, et cetera.
Somewhere George Allaire is smiling.
Somewhere George Allaire's smiling, yeah.
Hard on that, man.
Yeah.
I tell you, he really worked.
Are they going to use any of the drive-in site for laydown?
It was discussed, but it's something where they would have to actually come before the Board of Selectmen for use of town-owned land and designate a certain area that they would like to use. But it almost is necessary.
Okay.
So moved.
Off
Did
motion?
you say motion?
I did. So moved. All in favor?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Who seconded that? Thank you, Lee.
I heard Lisa a second.
I'm sorry for your throat there, Lee. You sound like you're getting over a cold.
No, it's, I think it's allergies.